Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, President Rodrigo Duterte tells China, lay off Pag-asa Island.
Let us be friends, but do not touch Pag-asa Island and the rest. Otherwise, things would be different.
The Foreign Affairs Department calls the presence of Chinese fishing vessels in the area illegal.
The Philippines has consistently manifested its position on the Pag-asa Islands and on the KIG, and its objections or concerns over illegal, tension-raising or coercive activities.
The military reports more than 200 vessels remain near Pag-asa Island.
Walang threat po since we're still monitoring them. This is a common fishing ground for countries like sa Chinese.
And China vows to resolve the conflict through friendly and diplomatic channels.
Our line of communication has always been open. They are fishing there. They must be fishermen. So far as I know, they are not armed at all.
Former Foreign Affairs Chief Perfecto Yasay Jr. joins us live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. From his usual friendly stance on issues involving China, President Rodrigo Duterte changes tune and tells Beijing to lay off Pag-asa Island. The president, however, was quick to clarify that even if he is open to deploying more troops to defend the territory in what he calls a suicide mission, he's also open to a compromise. The Foreign Affairs Department says that the presence of Chinese vessels near Pag-asa Island is illegal and unconstitutional. DFA Chief Teddy Boy Locsin says he had filed a number of note verbals against China. Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have former Foreign Affairs Secretary Perfecto Yasay Jr. Secretary, good to see you again. How have you been?
Same here, Pinky. I've been fine. Nothing could be more relaxing than to be out of public service.
Especially out of the DFA. Sir, the military confirming about 275 Chinese vessels making their way in and out of the Pag-asa Island in the first quarter only of 2019. I wanted to ask, during your watch, did a similar incident happen?
Not
in
that
Pag-asa?
not that many. But you see, as I understand it today, this is not incursions on one day. This took place starting from January to March. So you're really talking about maybe on the average, not that much, no? But if you total the whole number, then 270 would sound very alarming. Be that as it may, our position has always been that that kind of incursion is contrary to our sovereignty. And it's something that we are concerned about. But again, there are also other much broader concerns that will enable us to have the flexibility in making sure that whatever action we take, it will not be confrontational. It will be more of making sure that we make clear our position on a particular issue.
And that's exactly what the president is saying. However, when you see something like this, sir, near the Pag-asa Island, would you say that's a lot? How would you describe that?
I'd say that's a lot. I saw pictures also sometime in the area of Scarborough Shoal, which is another area. But this one looks a lot. But let me tell you about the uniqueness about that situation known as the Kalayaan Island Group, no?
Or KIG.
Or the Spratly, for that matter. While many of these areas are well within our exclusive economic zone, and the arbitral tribunal had already defined and made clear our rights with respect to that EEC, and in fact said that China's so-called non-dust line has no legal basis in international law. What we should always take note of is that the issue about Pag-asa is something different. To begin with, Pag-asa is a little bit outside of our exclusive economic zone, right? But we have laid a claim in Pag-asa as part of the territory of the Philippines.
Through presidential decree during the time of President Ferdinand Marcos in 1978.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay. So it's beyond the 200 nautical miles.
It is outside. It's
beyond that.
Yeah, beyond, yeah. China has also laid claim. Even Vietnam has laid claim in some of the islands in the KIG.
Malaysia as well,
yes.
sir. Yeah.
But the point is, there has never really been a case that has been filed to finally resolve this issue. Who owns it? UNCLOS is not the proper tribunal for that. But what is so significant about the UNCLOS tribunal was we were able to get a declaration about the status of certain features in the South China Sea as merely being rocks, not island.
Yeah.
Now, Etuaba is the case in point. The arbitral tribunal said that Etuaba is a rock. Therefore, it does not generate a 200-mile EEZ on its own.
But I'm a little confused with that, Secretary. If you're saying that, why is the DFA saying that the presence of Chinese vessels in Pag-asa Island, number one, is illegal because of the UNCLOS or what is stated in the 1982 United Nations Convention law, on the Law of the Seas?
Both. Also under international and under UNCLOS, that territory which we have defined by law and which we have occupied historically and which we have claimed for as long as one can remember, is Philippine territory. We have occupied it. Nobody else is there. In fact, it is now part of the municipality in the province of Palawan. So that alone is a very clear indication that China cannot encroach on this territory.
So is the presence of the Chinese vessels there illegal or not, sir?
Yes, it violates our sovereignty.
Okay.
Yeah. It has to get permission from us, and they have not been there. Remember this, if you talk about the Chinese vessels, because assuming that Pag-asa is a rock, it is not an island, because the biggest feature was declared as a rock, then it only generates a 12-mile territorial limit.
Which is the 12 nautical miles.
All of these vessels are within the territorial
That's what
limit.
I wanted to ask you. Can you educate us on that? Because if we're talking about Pag-asa Island, President Marcos then, I believe in 1987, had a presidential decree on this. We have now a mayor, we have soldiers there, we have about 200 people living in Pag-asa Island. It's the biggest in the features in the KIG or the Kalayaan Island group. How much of that is supposed to be ours within the nautical miles? I guess my question is 12 nautical miles from Pag-asa Island shores the Philippines? Hence, nobody can pass through that without permission?
Our occupation of Pag-asa by itself is precisely the basis in international law in claiming that we have sovereignty over that area. There are other features like Lawak, Parola, and so on that we also occupy. The Chinese could not also be there because we claim this as part of the municipality of
But nobody lives there.
There are.
It's just really in Kalayaan. It's just really in Pag-asa Island.
As a Pag-asa, the municipality of Pag-asa as part of the province covers the other features.
I see. Okay.
As defined in that presidential decree.
So, again, is there that 12 nautical miles from the shore of Pag-asa Island that is within the jurisdiction of the Philippines because we have sovereignty, jurisdiction, and sovereign rights over Pag-asa Island?
The vessels are within the 12-mile territorial limit, so we can enforce that as part of our...
In other words, Secretary, they cannot enter Pag-asa Island. They can only enter after the 12 nautical miles for freedom of navigation?
Outside, yes.
They can pass through?
They can pass through.
After the 12 nautical miles?
Yes.
What happens if they're within the 12 nautical miles?
They violate our sovereignty.
There were reports, though, that some of them were actually within 5 nautical miles.
4 even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they say they're just fishing.
You cannot. Yeah. Although while it is outside of our exclusive economic zone, yet because it is within the territorial limit of that rock, then they have to get our permission. They can even fish there.
But they're not. Now you have about 275
and that's exactly
of them.
what President Duterte meant, except that as a matter of not being confrontational, he said this to China straightforwardly, firmly, but said, you know, I'm saying this to you as a friend. Yeah, we don't want to get into that red line that we've set. Do not attack, do not... So he said it in a very nice but firm manner. And we continue to be friends.
Let's listen exactly to what the president said about Pag-asa Island.
No, I'm trying to tell China, yung Pag-asa is ours. We have been there 1974. Kung inyo yan, bakit hindi ninyo pinaalis kami? So, let us be friends, but do not touch Pag-asa Island and the rest. Otherwise, things would be different. I am not, this is not a warning, this is just a word of advice to my friends. Kasi kaibigan tayo ng China. So, ay nakikiusap ako. I will not plead or beg, but I'm just telling you that lay off the Pag-asa because may mga sundalo ako dyan. At pag yan ang ginalaw ninyo, ibang istorya na yan. Di sabihin ko na yung mga sundalo ko, prepare for suicide missions.
Words uttered by the president, is that enough, Secretary?
No.
Oh, yeah. In making clear our position, making clear, yes. We are bound by even the rules of international law as much as China is bound not to use force or violence in making sure that conflicts are not resolved in that manner. We are always bound to exhaust all legal and diplomatic processes in trying to resolve conflicts. And this is what we're trying to do. Yeah. And words at this point are become, under certain circumstances like now, would be proper, would be appropriate.
How important are diplomatic protests, whether they're, which I want to talk about after the break, note verbals, diplomatic notes, diplomatic protests. I want to find out the difference. How important are those?
They're important in clarifying our position, lest we be misconstrued or misunderstood as having waived certain things, yeah?
They must be filed.
Yeah, we must, either by note verbal or some other diplomatic means.
We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. When we come back, a compromise with China in dealing with Pag-asa Island. Former Foreign Affairs Secretary Perfecto Yasay will still be with us after the break. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Perfecto Yasay. We were talking about this during the break. So really, that Spratly Island, sir, is still a disputed area where Pag-asa Island is.
That's correct.
And it just becomes ours because there was a presidential decree. We owned it and we
occupy it.
We occupied it.
We exercise sovereignty over it.
But it's the same with Vietnam. They have a number of structures there, sir. The same with Malaysia. They even have a structure there, I believe, with a hotel, also in the Spratly Islands. So it makes it theirs as well.
Yeah, they assert it as theirs, and nobody can encroach that unless you go to international law, to an international tribunal to have that resolved. And that's why it continues to be a disputed area.
Why doesn't anyone want to bring it to an international court?
For many reasons. For one, you might lose. Once you initiate a particular thing, and then the ruling is adverse, you're bound by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. But for as long as you are able to exert effective sovereignty over that area, and you tell people you cannot get into that area because it is ours, you violate our territorial and sovereignty, our sovereignty, then that's enough. We can enforce it, and international law will recognize that the other side will not be able to occupy that island by force.
But I want again to show that number of fishing vessels over there around Pag-asa Island. How do you see this? Do you see this as a possible pretext to seize Pag-asa? Is this some sort of harassment? Is it some sort of bullying? The Spratly Island is a big area. Do they do the same with those territories held by Vietnam or even Malaysia?
You don't want to speculate on what are the motives of China, but the fact is that what China is doing is not right. It is in violation of our sovereignty, and it's enough that we assert that and we say that. Yeah, as to why China is doing that, it can be a host of other reasons, and your guess will just be as good as mine.
Would you know, though, Secretary, if the same situation has happened in Vietnam, where they occupied certain parts of the Spratly Islands, and also Malaysia, sir?
Vietnam, I know that there were some disputes. There were even, to some degree, some skirmishes.
Yes.
But not to my knowledge involving Malaysia. Then again, that's another matter. Yeah.
So let's now go to the diplomatic protest, which you were saying is important to issue in order for us to assert our claim to a particular area, such as Pag-asa Island. DFA Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin was saying he actually fired a number of, I fired off a salvo of diplomatic notes so I would not be accused of insincerity. Secretary, could you help us understand what is a note verbal, what is a diplomatic note, what is a diplomatic protest?
These are the, all of those terms that you've used are all terms in international law that enables us or a state to communicate with another insofar as their international relationship is concerned. So that's simply that. It can take the form of a protest, where appropriately the term will be a démarche. But,
which we've never used.
Oh, yeah, because it's a French, no, perhaps nobody will understand. But if you say a note verbal, I guess because note verbal has a fixed idea in the minds of a layperson, then that could be more readily understood. But the point is, you communicate your position, you communicate your information, your stand on particular issues. That's how you do it. And you make clear that the other side will not violate that position if you feel that you're exerting that or asserting that as a matter of your right under international law.
Sir, is there a note, a verbal, or a démarche? Which of them would actually hold more weight in terms of your protests against a particular possible incursion?
The problem with protests, as I understand it from that statement, is that people think that that is a way of enforcing. No, it is not. Protests are never ways of enforcement, you know. It's just expressing your objection to a particular conduct. So you can only go that far. Yeah. Anything stronger can result to even violence, to the use of force, and you do not want to do that.
But what is normally filed? I guess that's my question, sir. Is it the démarche that you're saying? Is it a note verbal? Because different terms are being used, and I'd like to understand that. What is normally filed?
It can be as formal as that. You use a note verbal or you use a démarche. In my time, when I was secretary, I even called the ambassador. Yeah, and I told him that our position is firm. You cannot do that. And then I followed it up with the note verbal. Yeah. So, but you can only go as much. What will you do? If they continued to do what they had been doing, then international law comes into play. They violate the rules about provocative acts, about using force and intimidation and getting what they want. Then let them be held accountable under international law. If another foreign country feels offended by that because it violates the freedom of navigation, let them do that and assert themselves under international law.
In January 2017, sir, you were my guest here in The Source, and I remember you saying that you issued 3 or 4 note verbals, but we were talking about the militarization in the Spratly Islands and the state of the fishermen in Scarborough Shoal. I don't think our issue there was Pag-asa Island back then. It was really the militarization in the Spratly Islands. You said 3 to 4. Looking back now, and since you left the DFA, how many note verbals or protests did you file under your watch?
I would say about 4. Yeah, 4. It could be more. Yeah, but I'd say about 4. But I also had the occasion to verbalize the position of the Philippines with respect to our ambassador here, and even to to my counterpart, the foreign minister of China, Wang Yi, in many international dialogues that we've had abroad.
How did the ambassador and the foreign minister respond to your verbal communication?
Well, they will always assert their position in the manner that they do in international law, and we continue to do ours, you know. So the next step is the other side. This is just as much as you can do, especially for a country like the Philippines. But I'd like to inform everybody, people watching this interview, is that it is not because we're scared. It is because it's the right thing to do. We are bound by the rules under international law. We cannot use force. Yeah, it's the problem of China if they do it to us, and we have our treaty obligations with the United States. We have the commitment of the international community. Nothing is stopping them from making sure that international is respected by everyone.
I understand where you're saying that we're bound by law and we cannot use force, but isn't 275 Chinese vessels in the first quarter of 2019 around Pag-asa Island a show of force by China?
Remember, these are not military ships, huh?
They're militias.
Ah.
Are they Chinese militias?
This is the
But
this
does
is
it
the
even
assumption.
matter,
Yeah.
Secretary?
Because when we talk about the use of force, it does matter. It does matter. There is a cover, yeah, and you want to make sure that when you take action, you're taking action that is correct. Now, what will you do under the circumstances? Fire at this so-called ships that you believe
Loitering?
are like, what if they're fishermen? You shoot them? You see, these are things that you take into consideration. And then the problem there is that you give the other side, you know,
ammunition.
The basis to even invade your island. And when there's war, invasion, and the victor gets even your property.
But why can't we shoo them away the way they shoo our fishermen away from Scarborough?
Right now? Well, again, that goes back into a little bit of history. We were in control of Scarborough Shoal before, until 2012. We had our government ships there, right? But we were tricked into going out. When we went out, the Chinese ship remained there and nobody's allowed to go in there, right? Now, I am not too sure about reports where fishermen are driven out of Scarborough Shoal. If you go inside the shoal, you will definitely be driven out. But there's really nothing we can do about it. Unless if China will start shooting our fishermen, then if they did that, then that's something else.
All right, we'll be taking another short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Perfecto Yasay. So you spoke with the foreign minister, you spoke with the ambassador, you issued 4 note verbals. How do they respond? First, with your verbal communication.
Yes. At the first instance, like the foreign minister, the ambassador, they always just reiterate their position on the issue. But there were more what we saw as blatant incursions, like having even military ships cross our border without our permission. They ask permission to cross, but before they get the permission, they're already across, you see. So these were matters that I also had to protest vigorously. The response in this particular instance would always be, we'll look into the matter, we will investigate, we'll find out, we will verify. Yeah. But the point is, having said that, having articulated your firm position on that, you can be sure that if it will be repeated, it will be not done in that blatant terms, in that manner. Yeah. But you see, it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about note verbals? Do they respond to note verbals?
No. They, not in my time. I guess they do. They will come up with a formal and written response as well. But during my time, they never did. Yeah.
We were talking about Scarborough Shoal before we took a break, and you were saying that, well, number one, there's already a protest against a complaint filed by former Secretary Albert Del Rosario, former Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, on what they call as crimes against humanity by President Xi Jinping because of, the crimes against humanity on hundreds of thousands, 300,000 Filipino fishermen. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's political hogwash, to put it simply and bluntly.
Why?
Well, the rationale being that there is an implication that President Duterte and President Xi Jinping are conniving with each other in the violation of human rights, and that the Philippines is not doing anything about it, so they're doing it themselves. It is really intended at the end of the day not to improve our position with respect to what China is doing in this area, but more to embarrass the president. And I think, no matter how you look at it, the bottom line is just plain politics.
They're saying they're doing it on behalf of the Filipino fishermen, sir.
Hey, I could say it in many ways and not avoid being partisan and political. Yeah, you have to come up with a good cover, but I think this one is just putting it too far. Yeah.
Last question, sir. Do you think this will be resolved anytime soon, the problem in the South China Sea?
You see, I don't think so. I do not even think it will be solved during our lifetime. Maybe not even perhaps in the lifetime of the succeeding generation. But what is most important, as we should always understand, is keeping stability and peace in the region, realizing fully well that these present areas of conflict constitute a small matter compared to a bigger picture that we must pursue. One of the things that I see as stymie to achieving the objectives of dissipating the conflict is this element of mistrusts, which other people are trying to exploit. And this is what we're trying to build, the trust and confidence to come across so that all our actions and their actions can be received with that mutual trust. And then we are able to achieve the bigger picture. And this is what I'm trying to say. We may not be able to to resolve this territorial dispute, this conflict. But believe me, there are other urgent priorities like relating into other relationships of commercial transactions, people-to-people contacts, making people understand each other, cultural exchanges, and so on. These are priorities, and this can also help in solving eventually the conflict in the future.
Very briefly, do you trust China's intentions?
I trust China. I don't.
Okay.
But I am trying to build the trust. Yeah, I will take their word for it, but I will continue to be wary. Yeah.
Thank you to former Foreign Affairs Secretary Perfecto Yasay. Good to see you again, sir.
Thank you.
And
yeah,
be well, stay well.
Yeah.
And that is The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.